Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm your host, Nathan Staples, and joining me this evening are GFFN writers Eric Devin, Philip Bargil, and Peter Bowler. 2 weeks in, and the crazy world of Liga is in full spin as teams surprise us and rile us in equal measure, but there could be a spanner in the works already to turn French football on its head, breaking at the moment. We'll be more on that and what's happened this weekend after this week's news. Ligue 1's second match day was perhaps not as action-packed as the first, but we were still treated to a handful of impressive results. Lyon hosted Caen on Friday night, and while Les Gants weren't as incisive as they had been against Nancy, a pair of penalties from Alexandre Lacazette were enough to see the team maintain their hold on first place on goal difference. Saturday's early match saw Monaco visit Nantes, and Leonardo Jardine's trotting out a heavily rotated side in advance of Tuesday's Champions League clash with Villarreal. Despite this, a free kick from Gabriel Boschilia on 25 minutes was enough to provide a 1-0 victory. In the multiplex, Bastia thumped a Lorient team that had two players sent off. Alain Saint-Maximin scored the opening goal with a swerving strike from different distance before Enzo Crivelli added a brace to make it 3-0 for the Corsicans. Nice continued the theme of winning on the road, Alisson Player sticking home a rebound of Willian Cyprien's shot for a 1-0 defeat of Angers. Lille beat Dijon at home 1-0 thanks to Younes Sankare's late strike, while Rennes looked to have the rub of the green in a 2-0 victory over Nancy at the Rouson. Toulouse continued their surprising start to the season as goals from Issa Diop and Christophe Julien staked the host to an early 2-0 lead in the Garonne derby before Martin Braithwaite added a brace in the second half. Isaac Kisatellian scored an injury time, but it wasn't enough to prevent Bordeaux from a humbling defeat 4-1. Sunday's early match pitted Marseille against hosts Guingamp, and while substitute Florian Thauvin scored a sublime goal some 15 minutes from time, it was only a consolation as the Breton side took the 3 points 2-1. Saint-Etienne put their stumbling start to the league season behind them with an emphatic win over Montpellier 3-1 in Sunday's finale. Paris Saint-Germain knocked back Metz 3-0 behind goals from Lucas Moura and Levin Kurzawa and an injury time own goal for Le Grenier, adding insult to injury. In Ligue 2, Brest vaulted into first place courtesy of a dramatic 3-2 win over Valenciennes, while Sochaux, Strasbourg and Gazélec Ajaccio were all level on 8 points just below them. And if you want more insight on the French football as it happens, head on over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and follow us on Twitter at GFFN. We start this evening with some breaking news from Canal Plus that Marseille owner Margarita Louis-Dreyfus has an agreement with former Lotus F1 owner Gerard Lopez to claim the club. Not only that, he plans to bring back popular manager Marcelo Bielsa, and reportedly El Loco has 8 players he wants to bring in with him. I'll give you all a moment to digest that crazy news that's coming out. But Philip, I'll start with you. How big could this be if Marseille get this through the door?
Just to check if we've got the same amount of information. So this is about a Luxembourg tycoon made a lot of money in Formula One, wanting to buy the club, and they are actually going to do a press conference on the 28th or 29th, which is next Sunday or in a week, on Monday, with Bielsa bringing in 6 players, but when. So this is obviously wonderful news for Marseille. Given if you watch both their opening games, it wasn't good. Actually, I was actually expecting them to be much worse than that. The defense is very, very poor. Sakai largely at fault for Guingamp's first goal on Sunday. He loves to get forward. He doesn't really like to track back. Houbacan and Doria, not very good. Basically getting run over by Guingamp. Guingamp should have won just a little. little word on Sunday's game. Guingamp should have destroyed Marseille. I mean, 2-1 did not do the game enough justice. But going forward, I reckon Marseille aren't that bad. They got Thauvin and Kabila, who keep doing. Having return tickets to Newcastle. We don't really know which club they're playing for, if they're on loan or not, but they're playing for Marseille right now. They've got Gomis up front, proven goal scorer, and I'm kind of like the young Cowie who came on as a sub against Toulouse last week, and he didn't play very well, but he is promising. So I believe if Bielsa is going to bring new players, it's going to be defenders. But do Marseille need that? I mean, they really are in a rut, and I don't think the current squad. I think the current squad is good enough to stay up in Liga. But that's all they've got to look forward to. So if Mr. Lopez, so the Luxembourg very rich guy, does get buy the club for Margarita Louis Dreyfus, it can only be good news. I'm just wondering, can Bielsa bring in new players before the transfer window shuts? That's a big question.
Yeah, he's got not much time to do that.
Yeah.
If he does have people in mind. Eric, it's obviously very good news that it looks like Margarita Louis Dreyfus is finally giving up the club to someone who may have the funds to push them forward. But the really interesting news is the potential return of Bielsa. What do you think to that if he does return to the club?
Well, obviously he did wonderfully well back in the 2014-15 season, at least for the first, say, 3/4 of it. But and the team fell away, as Bielsa teams inevitably do. But I'm not. Again, as Philip rightly said, there's too many questions surrounding the defense for me. I think that Gomis, yes, has enjoyed some past success in Ligue 1, but you got to remember he was, I think, particularly with Lyon, at a higher quality of team than Marseille is at present. I think that there aren't the right pieces for Bielsa here. He wants to bring in 6 to 8 players. Well, okay, if Lopez has the money to do this and to stay within DNCG restrictions and to deal with the financial ramifications of using the velodrome and what have you, then perhaps there's some hope here. But I still don't see Bielsa Marseille being able to build anything impressive this season. I think that if Bielsa stays another season and is given an off-season to work with players, to have a little bit more player churn, then I think there is some opportunity here. Again, Marseille's a great club. I think that anybody who's a fan of French football would want them to succeed. But I think it might just be a little bit too late this window in this season for Bielsa to have the sort of incredible impact that he has had at other clubs, Marseille in particular, in the past. But again, going back to that team he had 2 years ago, you're talking about the likes of Gignac, of Ayew, of Dimitri Payet. I mean, these are top-class players. We've seen them move on to higher levels of success after that. And Nicolas Nkulu. I mean, there's Steve Mandanda. There's a whole entire starting 11 that's departed, and that's what's got to be overcome. And Bielsa might do a better job of it than would Passi, but it's still a less than ideal situation compared to the Marseille of, say, 4 or 5 years ago, or even 2 years ago.
It's only going to be a rebuilding season anyway. So if as soon as the better. I mean, if Bielsa can get in before the transfer window shuts, even if he doesn't sign any new players, I suppose it would have a positive impact on the players. But don't expect Marseille to suddenly gun for Europe or anything, because that's just not going to happen.
Peter, what do you think to the possible move of El Loco returning to Liga now? Obviously, like Eric mentioned, he had a very good start to his reign at the Stade Velodrome, but it did fall away, and he did fall out with some of the playing staff. So do you think he can really work, even though he's a very popular figure?
Yeah, if I'm honest, I don't think really that would be the right move. If you're looking at managers and the kind of impact managers can have on clubs, is Bielsa the kind of right personality that you want at a club that is effectively in a position where they could be fighting relegation rather than thinking about Europe? They have been so poor in these opening games that I really don't see the light at the end of the tunnel at the moment for Marseille, and I'm not sure that bringing in somebody who obviously is a bit of a football genius, Bielsa has done amazing things. I can still remember his Argentina team. But someone who is not necessarily always thinking long term. I think he showed that with Lazio, or the Lazio job that never was. I mean,
24 hours, was it?
24 hours. I mean, that's like a Britney wedding, isn't it? It's unbelievable. I'm not sure that's the kind of personality. I think if we were talking in terms of the Premier League and we were looking at a team who were struggling and who were not wanting to destabilise any further, you wouldn't be looking at bringing in a personality like Bielsa's. What's their alternative? I've honestly got no idea.
Yeah.
I think it's still a good thing. I mean, I think it's certainly not a long-term solution, but I think it'll get the club back on its feet, and we'll get more of us as the fans back in the stadium. This is what is the most important, because I think the ultras are going just because it's sarcastic quotation marks a duty to go to the ground. But having Bielsa, they'll be absolutely thrilled to have him, and I think he'll build something. Decent. Whether he'll still be there in 5 years, I have no idea.
Well, almost certainly not, probably. But
but
he's a great football manager.
You can say that for a lot of managers.
Well,
sadly.
yeah, you could, yeah. But I just think to myself that Marseille look like they need stabilising. They need to stop the rot. They're losing. They've lost their best players over the summer transfer window. Doesn't look like anybody promising wants to come. I mean, I saw them linked with Adel Taarabt today. Taarabt. Oh,
yeah,
I mean.
They're broke.
Yeah.
They can't get anyone.
Well,
that's why Doria's playing. It just can't get anyone.
Let's talk about it. We've already mentioned, Eric, that short-term wise he might not be the best option, and this report of him possibly bringing up to 8 players with him through the door if he can manage to get them over the line of the transfer window, is that something that can help? Are Marseille really needing that many players in, or is this just a case of let's buy as many players and just hope that something sticks to the wall when we throw it at it?
I think it's a matter of who these players are. I mean, the thing is, right now the players they brought in over the summer, I think have generally been less than inspiring. Ubacan's looked all right. I'll give them that. Diaby's looked all right coming back into fitness. Pele has actually looked a decent keeper, now that he's no longer Mandanda's backup. But a lot of these other players, Rekic at left back doesn't work. Sakai at right back doesn't work. I still have questions over Thauvin. I still have questions over Cabela. They're decent enough players, but for Marseille to be where they want to be, they're not quite enough at this point in time. I think that there's really a raft of players can help, but given the transfer fees we've seen for players over the summer, as a result of the Premier League's TV deal, I think that any players of any decent level of quality are frankly beyond Marseille's means at this point. So, for me, I'd rather see Marseille buckle down and play a hyper-defensive style. And I think that that would be perhaps not to the fans' liking, but would perhaps give them a solid base going forward to it. Then, in the winter window, perhaps next summer, Bielsa can perhaps then start to bring players through. Maybe Marseille shouldn't be averse to taking players on loan from some of the bigger clubs in Ligue 1. Lyon, for example, have a glut of attacking players. I mean, I know that the two clubs don't exactly have the friendliest relationship, but perhaps there's a space there for Valbuena to return on loan, for example. Something like that makes more sense to me than trying to sell players, trying to buy players on a permanent basis at this point in the market, and with the frankly extortionate prices we've seen for most players to date this summer.
I actually reckon that Rekic has done all right at left back, considering who he's been playing with. So that may not be, actual compliment, and that Diaby just cannot play in Liga anymore. Just doesn't have the legs.
Let's just very quickly. I'll throw a step at Peter just for the long-term security of Marseille. Obviously, getting an owner here who will probably invest in the club is the important thing. But what should the long-term plan be? Should it be reinvesting in the squad and making them the power they were, or is it stabilising and trusting in youth players? Where should they take the direction of this club for the next couple of years?
I think it's got to be a mixture of the two, hasn't it? I mean, obviously you need the financial backing, you need financial security and stability, but why not go and look for players that want to play for Marseille, not players who want to play for a pay packet? Marseille is one of the most fantastic, historic clubs in not just France, but in world football. And I'm sure there are many players out there, even in Liga, playing for other Liga teams at the moment, who would be honoured to wear the Marseille shirt. And I think that there needs to be a decent recruitment team put into that club who can locate these players, not decent players who want huge wages or just desperately want to get back in the limelight, naming no names. I think they need to go for players who are going to offer Marseille some loyalty and, try and find those Mandandas, those Nkulus, those kind of stable personalities who are just going to bring that club back to where it's supposed to be.
Still a very big pool, though. I mean, Marseille is still the biggest club in the country, and a lot of players would dream to play for them. It would be good, it would be good for them to become a bit of the club used to be when Lyon were dominant. You see what I mean? They wouldn't take the best Ligue 1 players, but they would take the very decent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm thinking about Mandanda when they signed Mandanda from Le Havre, and Lyon had Loris because their opinion was that Loris was better than Mandanda, but Marseille still got Mandanda for what was it, 5-6 years, great years of service, and that's the kind of thing that I'm pretty sure with an owner that actually has money, or shall I say, doesn't mind spending it in the footballing industry. I'm pretty sure this can happen. I mean, no problem. There's no reason it shouldn't happen.
And just to mention, our friend Mohammed Ali has just reported that Margarita Lewis-Dreyfus has denied these reports that she has sold the club. That's from La Provence as well. So we shall wait and see. This is obviously only speculation at the moment, but this is something that's going to, especially over the next couple of days, is going to start snowballing, I think. But we'll wait and see. So we'll move on to matters on the pitch now, where we're only a few weeks in, and already, much like any heavyweight classic fight, the top two are already starting to trade early blows. Both Paris Saint-Germain and Lyon picked up strong results against relatively little resistance this weekend, but we will start with the reigning champions, Philip. Did PSG slowly hit their stride last night in the second half?
I was quite actually, I would probably not surprised. It's probably not the right word, but PSG did look very nervy when they had the ball in the penalty area. They didn't seem to have this kind of composure, and the game was extremely scrappy. The first half, especially, was extremely scrappy, and PSG didn't. I mean, there was all these long balls to Cavani, who had probably his worst ever game for PSG. He was absolutely dreadful. So chances were made, but not having Zlatan on the pitch really did make the players sink, and it wasn't just Cavani being absolutely awful. It was Di Maria not being particularly, shall we say, decisive in front of goal, putting lots of shots off targets. Actually made a poll halfway on the hashtag GFFN match zone. Are PSG going to have a shot on target in the first half? It really wasn't good. It wasn't inspiring. And with Cavani not playing well, Pastore not being great, and Di Maria being uninspiring, those three players are probably the players you would expect who the goals are going to come from. Because who scored? Lucas Moura, who doesn't score very often. He does score occasionally. Some important goals, of course. Kurzawa, who may well finish PSG's top scorer if he keeps going on like this, and Verratti, who we haven't seen in a year. So that's really three unfancied goal scorers. I think you would have had pretty good odds for those three scoring in a game against Metz, who we actually all predicted will finish bottom bottom of the league with not a whole lot of points, but they were good. They were quite. I was quite impressed here, especially by Enget and Doucouré. Doucouré had a good game, but yeah, PSG were. It wasn't Cavani's night, that's for sure. Hopefully he'll play better. Otherwise, he definitely has to be sold. But Di Maria and Pastore were not at the races either. Let's be completely honest. And I thought having David Luiz play for PSG at the back, PSG looks so relaxed and far too relaxed. Trapp. It's amazing that Trapp kept a clean sheet. So overall, it was not a good night for PSG, despite winning 3-0. And people are going to say that. That's part of the course.
Eric, let's talk about that first half, because it was a lot of PSG possession and a lot of. I wouldn't say Metz had necessarily 10 men behind the ball, and it wasn't the most organised defensive display necessarily in the midfield, especially. And PSG were creating opportunities, but they weren't really sticking them away in that first half, when they should. The way we were, at least possession-wise, really on top.
Yeah, honestly, it doesn't surprise me. I've defended Cavani for years now, but especially in this new situation, new system, he just doesn't work. He's had it. There's something, I think, very psychologically wrong with this player in terms of his confidence in front of goal, and it's sad to see, because if we think back to his days with Lavezzi and Hamšík at Napoli, he was fantastic. He was one of the best strikers in the world at that point in time, and he couldn't miss. And even he's been decent enough at stints at PSG. And when Ibrahimovic had a long-term layoff in the fall of 2014, Cavani scored a couple important goals in the Champions League. He kept the team afloat in the league. I mean, at that point, Marseille and Lyon were flying, and PSG were in third place for most of the fall. But Cavani's goals kept them in the title race, kept them in the Champions League where they needed to be. But at this point in time, it's frustrating. From his perspective, to see him doing this, because it's depressing his sale value if the club do want to sell him, and it's depressing that the likes of Ben Arfa haven't clicked in that role either, and nor has Hesse, who again is injured at this point in time, and could be the answer there. I think actually might be their best option long term. But now the question might be, sell Cavani and bring in another striker. There's still 9 days left in the window. It seems like that's the best option going forward. Someone who's a little bit more dynamic, likes a
lot more dynamic.
A lot more dynamic. Well, I mean, Cavani's movement's never been his problem for me, Philip. I mean, honestly, I think he's played decently enough when used on the left of that 4-3-3 over the past 3 seasons. He's a willing runner. He's a willing worker, but his finishing is the problem now, and that's gonna be PSG's undoing. I mean, let's face it. They were. I mean, you watched the match against Bastia the other weekend. They were lucky to get a goal there. That was a deflected, and Bastia defended well. They're going to see a lot of that in Liga, and they're going to see, depending on who they get in the Champions League, maybe they get somebody like a smaller team that they could defend well and potentially cause an upset as well. And this situation needs to be rectified if they're really going to have the ambitions to replicate last year's success.
We can't be really too worried about that, because it's a new manager, it's a new system, and lots of novelties around. But I actually didn't think PSG. I mean, I actually backed Metz to earn a 0-0 draw last night, given how let's say not decent in front of goal all the 3 players I mentioned, so Cavani, Di Maria, and Pastore, were. And if it weren't for Lucas, and actually Aurier played a great part on the first goal, and he's having a great start to the season. Actually, they're both fullbacks. Kurzawa is our player of the season for the time being. If it weren't for Lucas's goal, I don't think the fullbacks would have been open. And actually, between PSG's first goal and between PSG's second goal, I seem to recollect at least 3 Kevin Trapp saves, and good saves. Those were great chances.
Oh, he was fantastic.
Yeah, he was great, and David Luiz was not. It was appalling how the players seemed to rest on their laurels. It was it was David Luiz honestly had the body language of a guy saying, "Okay, I'm not really bothered by football. You can go on and score a goal if you want."
Yeah,
Unfortunately, Metz didn't, but it would have 1-1 would have been deserved. But
Yeah.
Kevin Trapp is a decent goalkeeper, and he kept credit to him. He kept a clean sheet, but it's very worrying. Of course, I can hardly see David Luiz partnering Kimpembe in a Champions League quarter-final, say against Real Madrid in March.
No,
I hope not.
It's much more worrying against the bigger teams the way they're defended, isn't it? But let's talk about Cavani a little bit more, Peter. Do you think he's the sole issue with PSG's attacking play and not finishing chances, or is there other areas they need to fix?
No, I don't think he's the sole issue at all. In fact, I think he's just one minute part of a repetition of the same problem, which is that you've got a lot of individuals there who have all made a name for themselves on performing unbelievable feats of individual skill. I mean, Ben Arfa, Di Maria, Lucas, Cavani, did these all strike you as team players? I'm not sure. I think to myself sometimes, just to pick on something that you said, Philippe, about how this is worrying. I'm not sure that this is worrying. I think this is absolutely fantastic. I think a bad season for PSG in Liga is good for Liga. I think it's about time that PSG went through a transition and some other teams out there got a chance to steal the limelight. I mean, I'm sure we'll come on to them, but I think Lyon look absolutely excellent at the moment.
Yeah. And we'll come on to those in a moment. But I do want to mention the team that obviously played last night, and that was Metz. And Philip, you said they played well, and I too was impressed by Opangeta. I thought he was excellent. I think since we last saw him in Liga a couple of years ago with Valenciennes, he seems to have added a little bit of strength and power. He kept the ball very well. I thought his counter-attacking play was very good as well. And they did a great job of stifling a PSG side that's tried to change the kind of way they play. I mean, it looks like under Emery, especially in these games in Liga, they're playing a more narrower style of system that allows those fullbacks to almost act like wing-backs. And you saw it a lot. Often Lucas would pop up in the box. Often Pastore might pop out on a wing, or Di Maria would appear in the middle of the park. And those three were given a freedom to move around, but they were much more narrow than they were last season. And I thought that Metz did a very good job of controlling that area and stopping them from playing too many short, quick passes. And I thought they really impressed. And against bigger teams, they might be. Against smaller teams, they might cause a couple of problems like they did against Lille earlier this week. What did you think, Philip?
It's quite ironic because I think it's our panel. So it was a very big podcast we had 2 weeks ago, the 2-hour one, and also our friends at French Football Weekly both said that Metz would finish bottom, or something along the line. I don't want to put any words in anyone's mouth. And actually, what is happening is that Metz actually having a bright start to the season. It was a good win on the opening day, 3-2 against Lille. Was it? Lots of penalties in that game. I think it was Lille. And a very spirited performance. And while Dijon and Nancy are not having a great start to the season, I honestly thought before the first goal that they could hold on for a 1-0 win because PSG had no one to put the ball in the back of the net to put it mildly. And if you don't have that guy, well, you're not going to score. So it would have been, of course, PSG failed against a very poor Metz side, but of course people who wouldn't have watched the game would have said that. But really, in the first hour until Lucas's goal, they were very compact in the middle. They made the game scrappy. They made the game extremely scrappy, and it was not particularly a joy to watch if you wanted free-flowing football. But this is what Metz came to do. They came to not concede any goals, and of course it's a bit funny to say this now that they've lost 3-0, but they made life extremely hard for PSG, and they don't, they've got nothing to be ashamed of from this defeat. And looking at the season, you can say, okay, we played 2 games, won 1, lost 1, but played well in both of them and created chances, lots of chances. Had it not been for a very good Kevin Trapp, it would have scored. Maybe even twice.
consider us relatively impressed. But we'll talk about their current closest challengers, and they're currently sat at the top of Liga with on goal difference. And Peter's already mentioned how he thought they look fantastic. But we'll go to the Lyon expert almost in Eric. You've mentioned that their selection choices are very interesting at this point in time, with a good amount of rotation in the game at the weekend. Eric, what did you think to the victory and their choices ahead?
Yeah, I mean, I think well done. Yeah, obviously scoring from open play is preferable to scoring from penalties, but we saw how dangerous Caen can be. I think the defense played pretty well, and Kulu in particular had a fantastic match. Rybus looks, Maciek Rybus, the Polish international, got his debut. He plays at Morel. He looks very good, very composed, not overly attacking, which could not be the best idea in Ligue 1, but in the Champions League, I think you need someone who's going to put in a shift and play in that way. I think that Raphael, I still don't have a lot of confidence in. I think that his attacking proclivities leave the team too open on that side. And then, positional battles. I guess what I was coming at this from is the fullback positions, Raphael versus Jale, Rybus versus Morel when fit, and then Darder versus Jordan Ferry. Now, Sergei Darder was signed last summer from Malaga. He's a Spanish under-21 international, and I know Nathan was very high on him when he came in, but I think that as obviously talented as he is, he's a lovely player with the ball at his feet, has pretty good vision, can score the odd goal. The goal against PSG last season comes to mind immediately, but I think that at this point I have to wonder whether Ferry wouldn't make a better replacement, and this is why. Tolisso, Gonalon, and Ferry all bring a similar unity of approach. They're players who are very combative, very aggressive, maybe even, especially in Ferry's case, a little bit too much. But nevertheless, what allows that front three to have the freedom and dynamism in attack that they do is knowing that if they're going to pull wide or cut inside, the likes of Ferry and Tolisso are there to support them. And they're there to do it with a chippy, energetic edge, and not be sort of this. I mean, what Darder reminds me of right now is sort of Pastore at his worst. Honestly, he's a player who's great at the ball, can play a long pass when necessary, but in terms of his work rate, he can sometimes go missing. And I think that Ferry is a much more energetic and battling player that I think would give Lyon a much more solidity. Now, maybe Genesio sees this as well and wants to play Ferry against higher level opposition, but for me, it's not a good sign at this point that Darder is being preferred to Ferry at this point in the season.
I think I will mention, obviously I've mentioned that I do like Darder, and I think he started reasonably well, but I also do agree with you in the sense that he's, in my opinion, probably too similar to Tolisso to play both at the same time. Ferry obviously offers a more combative option, as you've mentioned, and sometimes it can be overly, but I think especially now with the formation that they're playing with Cornet and Fekir, now they're both fit, as those wide players, without either really having the capacity to come back and defend. Although Fekir's tried a little bit, they're both much more dangerous and much more advantageous to Lyon being further forward in the field. That having Darder is maybe slightly a bit of a liability. And I agree, especially in Champions League games, I can see him, hopefully he spots it as well and he's playing Ferry. But Peter, you've mentioned that you've really enjoyed Lyon so far this season, and it was a good solid win. And Fekir was impressive again. He seems to be regaining fitness. What else impressed you about Lyon at the weekend?
I've got to be honest, everything impressed me about Lyon at the weekend. I thought they were organised. I thought they were very good while it was 0-0. Just to keep calm, they passed the ball well. They look a lot stronger at the back. I know they've obviously lost Mtete, and Kulu looks a really calming influence on them at the back. I just really like Lyon at the moment. I think they look like a team who are well drilled and know what the plan is from the get-go. And I think that's something that PSG are not looking like. And if we were going to be calling it now, I think Lyon are a strong contender for the title this year. If, as you guys were mentioning, if they can manage those players and get the best out of players like Fekir, I think he's obviously going to be huge for them if they can get him back to full fitness. If they can pull off what I thought was impossible and keep hold of Lacazette, then they're going to look like a real force. And I'm really, really excited to see what they can do in the Champions League as well, because I think they'll take a few teams by surprise.
Philip,
Going back to the trio debate, I'm very much in favour of reinstating Ferry next to Gunello and Tolisso. Naturally, because they know each other and they've had a wonderful, wonderful season. Not last season, but season before that, 14-15, where Lyon ran PSG close, and they were so compatible and so organized between themselves, so energetic, and I reckon Dade has had the time, but he needs to do much better if he wants to be a starter. But it is good also for Genesio to have that kind of option to if he wants to start Dade, start there. If the guy is not in form or unfit, he starts Ferry. I was also just like Eric, quite impressed by the defense, and I would like to see another Lyon PSG where Lyon actually defend. That would be nice to that would be nice to watch, because I was actually more impressed by Lyon's defense than Lyon's attack. Fekir did not have a good game. Cornet was didn't make the right choices, and this may sound a bit harsh on Lyon, but it does. First of all, I'm going to say that both penalties were a bit harsh. I reckoned, but I'm not quite sure they would have scored from open play. They created a lot, but I reckon Fekir didn't play well, and that Kone made the bad choices. But Lacazette is in red hot form, and that he's going to score every penalty this season. If wild prediction. But the main positive from Friday evening for me was the defense. Was Nkulu, was Younger, but up front I didn't find them to have the killer instinct, which is not worrying. I mean, come on, it's only the second game, but anyway.
Eric, let's very quickly touch on Con, and I know they impressed you at times last week against Lorient, especially Santini. It was more of a struggle against a much sterner opponent in this one, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think now seeing now how Lorient's defense distinguished themselves against Caen, I think we can see that Lorient might be in for a spot of trouble this season. But yeah, Caen, I think against the defenses playing as accomplished as Lyon's is, Caen were always going to struggle. The youngster Caramo looked really good, but other than that, not really a whole lot of positives to take away from this for Caen. Restricting Lyon to not scoring from open play, great, but I think they're, like I said, they're going to continue to have a bit of a hard time this season. I mean, Santini looked, completely handcuffed by Lyon center backs. He was nowhere near the force he was last weekend, and I think there's only going to be more of that to come.
Yeah, and results against the teams around them will be much more important this season, but hopefully they can bounce back next week. Well, we've had a taste of Liga action for about a fortnight now, and it's probably time to get some initial impressions on a team or a player that's impressed us, or make us take a little bit of notice, but also shine a light on those that have maybe made us furrow our eyebrows and wince in pain as they struggle to come out of the starting blocks. But let's be positive to start off with, and I'll throw this to you, Eric, to start with. I know you've been impressed with a forward at Bastia.
Yeah, Alan Saint-Maximin on loan from Monaco. And again, let's take this with a grain of salt. Lorient don't have the best defense, and they were down to 9 men eventually by the end of the match. But Saint-Maximin, for me, is just incredibly impressive because so often we see these younger attacking players go on loan to a club that might not play as aesthetically pleasing of a style as their parent club. We can think about the likes of maybe Babek in the recent past from PSG, and there's other examples as well. But Maximin, has come to Bastia, and not only is he this fantastic dynamic attacking player, and we saw that against PSG too. It's not just a matter of Laurent's weak defense, but he also gets back. I mean, watching him and Bafuma track back and aid in tackling and really embrace that the stern defensive ethos that Bastia have really speaks a lot to his character. This isn't a player who's just talented. This is a player who's willing to work, who's willing to earn his place, and I think can really do special things for Bastia this season. So well done to Bastia for picking him up on loan. He could really be a key to a much more successful season for them than they've had in the recent past.
Yeah, it's good to see him back in form, really, especially we've not really seen him this successful since he broke through initially at Saint-Etienne. Philip, I know we've talked about Toulouse being a potential relegation candidate at times with their team, but they've really impressed you over the first couple of games of the season.
Yeah, the performance at Marseille, they played better than Marseille last week. This cell of Wissam Ben Yedder, has somehow made Toulouse a bit more cohesive, I would think, and the chance given to the youth last season. So I'm thinking about Mr. Lafont, Diop, Abou, who was right back against Marseille. He didn't play against Bordeaux, and the players have grown in confidence and up front. So that was a big question. Why do we all think that Toulouse are going to go down? It's because they don't have Ben Yedder anymore to score the goals. But they with Braithwaite, Trejo, and other players. Somalia was quite good going forward as well. It's I think they're going to be okay, and they look they look like they don't look scared. They don't look okay. We're going to be the whipping boys. We're going to be one of those sides who go down. They look quite resilient, quite confident. It's a bit of a shame that they didn't have enough shall we say, belief in themselves to go on and get the 3 points at Marseille. Because otherwise, I reckon they would be on 6 points, just like Lyon PSG, which we just mentioned, and deservedly so.
Yeah, and it's impressive to see a team pick up, especially with Pascal Duprat behind them. I think they'll continue to hopefully keep up this form. Peter, you've been impressed by a team that's probably played by the weekend would have played 7 games already this season in Les Verts. They've impressed you, especially at the weekend.
Yeah, Saint-Etienne, I think they've been absolutely great to watch, especially considering we've been able to watch them so much, as you hinted at. I think they've shown a lot of things. I don't think people expected too much from Saint-Etienne or from Christophe Galtier, but Saint-Etienne have shown us that not only can they play multiple styles, they've played the 4-3-3 in Europe, they've played it in different ways as well. They've played possession football, keeping the ball between those 3 central midfielders. They've utilised the wide players in Hamouma, Monet Paquet and Tanan. And then against Montpellier, they came out and played 3-5-2. And initially I thought to myself, my goodness, Galtier's doing a Conte, he's changing everything and hoping to catch the enemy by surprise, as it were. And it worked. I know they conceded a slightly comedy goal at the beginning, but the way that Saint-Etienne reacted was absolutely fantastic. And they've got some real talent in that squad. Obviously, everybody kind of knows about Ruffier at the back, who I think they've done very well to keep hold of. But, players like Monet Paquet, Robert Berich looks like he's finally hitting some form. And the young chap as well, is it St. Louis? St. Louis?
Yeah, St. Louis.
Yeah, I thought he looked excellent. I mean, that was a fantastic header to score. I think it was Saint-Etienne to make it 2-1.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to like about this Saint-Etienne side. I think it's always impressive when you see a team playing and winning in multiple styles. And I think, if you're a Les Verts fan, you should be feeling positive. And I don't see any reason why they can't potentially push for Europe this season.
It's very refreshing because they seem to be taking Europa League very seriously, knocking out AEK Athens. Other French sides would have, Lille, would have not bothered with a win at AEK Athens because they wouldn't have wanted to play a playoff game against Beitar Jerusalem, which is not next to Saint-Etienne. But they look well up for it. They look well up for it in the league because it was, let's face it, was absolutely awful display in the first half against Montpellier. But the second half was great, so it evened itself out. So they look like they want it in the league and also in the Europa League, which is great. It's always great to have Saint-Etienne in the Europa League, given just for the amount of people they bring in the away end. And they just love to travel.
I'd love to see the Marseille fans back performing as they do, like the Saint-Etienne fans do, because they are a real force. And I think teams actually fear going to Saint-Etienne just for the atmosphere.
This is what we were talking about just before the show. Saint-Etienne actually had a strike, the fans, because the North stand, I think it was, when you're watching on the Saint-Etienne game on the box, behind the right goal, the goal on the right hand side, it was completely closed because of some flare problems. And basically what the Magic fans did, or the Green Angels, I don't know which ones, so that's an ultra group from both the two major ultra groups from Saint-Etienne. They went on strike. PSG used to do that, back when PSG were finishing 16th. They just go, ultras just say, we're not going to sing for the first 15 minutes. And it makes all the difference. It makes absolutely all the difference because Geoffroy Guichard is absolutely working all the time thanks to those ultras, and with the ultras going on strike with, first of all, one ultra group not being there and the other one going on strike for the first 15 minutes, it really sounded like a morgue. It was, and it didn't really help the players, and I think that's why the players weren't really that motivated, because they look so much better in the second half, and it's almost like the fans ordered them not to play well in the first half, but they say, okay, you can have fun in the second half if you want, which is great.
It's a crazy thought, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a crazy thought that fans could have
good.
so much power. But actually, I can remember maybe 2 years ago now watching a Coppa Nazionale final. It was Napoli against Roma.
Yeah.
And the absolute scenes at the beginning of this game where the Napoli fans essentially just wouldn't let the team play. And it's amazing how much fans can affect the morale of a team. And I think that if you want to look at the real positives of Liga compared to other European leagues, is that the fans are just out of this world.
Yeah, and it was very strange to see the Stade Geoffroy Guichard very quiet for part of that game. But we'll turn onto the negatives now, and I'll start with you, Eric. And it's Bordeaux with new managers, new players, but same old story.
Yeah, I mean, defense was an issue under under Leisagno. Defense is an issue again. And they're bottom of the table, joint with Lorient. 6 goals conceded and 4 scored. And again, you always have to take derby results in isolation. And that is the Garonne derby they played this weekend. But there just seems to be a lack of focus. I mean, Palois' red card obviously doesn't help matters, but this team's got to get it right and got to have. I love these young attacking players, likes of Malcolm, Gaetan Laborde. Adam Munas, they're fantastic to watch going forward, but if Gourvenec doesn't set this team up with a more obdurate defense, a more focus in central midfield on protecting the back four, then Bordeaux are going to suffer, and they shouldn't be, because there's simply too much talent at this club, especially having brought in the likes of Menez and Toulalan over the summer, for them to do this. Maybe there's something to be said for the goalkeeping situation, obviously, that Prieur doesn't seem to be at the races exactly either. Carasso sets to get back. Maybe that could help matters, but Pablo as well. But it's just really too frustrating for me to think about the talent that's frankly going to waste with this group of players.
Yeah, and they needed to really kick on after the result of the weekend. Peter, a side you follow very closely is in Lille, have been middling in the Europa League at best, but they've not impressed you in Ligue 1 either.
No, not at all. I really worry for Lille. I think that if they don't start to, if Antonetti doesn't start to find some fluidity in his decision making, that they really might struggle. I mean, I know they picked up their first win of the season against Dijon, but it was a far from convincing performance. It was all the same mistakes again. Defence didn't look organised. Dijon were finding gaps all over the place. And there were just so many managerial decisions that Antonetti makes that really just mystify me. I don't know why he plays with two. He plays a 3 in midfield, a 4-3-3. So you think to yourself, okay, what 3 players do I need in there? I need a defensive midfielder to cover the defence. I need a creative midfielder to set the wingers going, and I need an attacking midfielder. Now, that's pretty basic stuff. Antonetti plays 2 defensive midfielders in Sankari and Amadou, and then Amal Fintano, who I don't know what his role is. I don't know what he's offering to the team. I think there were times when players were just wildly out of position as well. I mean, I don't know if you guys watched it, but the amount of times that you saw Eder out on the left wing was just really, really unusual. And I think if they don't start to buck their trends a bit and find some different ideas and some different ways to win, then they could really struggle. I'm surprised that, especially after his performance the other week, that Ronnie Lopez didn't get a look in again, because he looks like really the only bright spark in this team. But yeah, bit of a shame that I had to sit through that whole game actually. But hey ho, you win some, you lose some, don't you?
Yeah, that's the struggle of being a Ligue 1 fan sometimes, isn't it, I think. But Philip, we've already mentioned them this evening, and you've already mentioned your brief worries about them. But Marseille, especially if that deal doesn't go through, are you fearful for them?
No, as I said, I don't think this side won't go down. I think up front they've got enough. But I was actually quite impressed by Pelé. I think he's having a good start to the season, and certainly Marseille would have lost 3 or maybe 4-1 to Guingamp had Pelé not make some very good saves. But they did score out of nothing. And that is that is something. It's not something that scoring out of nothing is not a lot of Ligue 1 sides can do that. But yeah, it's a defense. Sakai is, like I said, is far too eager to go forward and not track back. Doria and Hubert, especially Doria, getting absolutely owned by Briand just on the run. I mean, Briand is a fast player. He's a bit old, but he's still a very good player. And Guingamp were good going forward. But the big one thing I just do not understand is why is Abu Dhabi playing. I just don't understand it. You've got one of the best central midfielders in the world in Lassana Diawara playing next to someone who just isn't fit to play in Liga.
Who'd you rather have?
It's just actually
that's the issue, Philip. I mean, I empathize with you.
My cash didn't seem too bad when he came on, and frankly, I'd rather have someone than someone who's just not going to get better with age. It's just, I mean, he just loses every ball. He got absolutely demolished yesterday by Diallo, and we don't know if Makash is that bad. It's just and Passy knows that it's not working. Passy knows that Diaby is not playing well, and the worst part is it didn't strike me against Toulouse, but it struck me against Guingamp. Is that Diaby plays a bit as a box to box, which is quite a physical position, and Diaby is forced to play as a defense shielder, which really is a complete waste. I mean, Diaby, especially as in his captaining role, should be having more responsibilities, and he just had to stay in front of the defence in the first half. And of course, when he had a bit more of the ball, Marseille were able to play a bit more football. But it's just, that's the thing. And if anything, if Bielsa does come, if the deal does come through, and I honestly hope it does. Honestly, I think all 4 of us do. It's just buy a central midfielder, a good Ligue 1 central midfielder, because they really need one. Really do.
Shaken. That's what they
Yeah.
need.
It's that, tis that kind
I
of
would have
player
said
that
Florent
looks
Belmont, but he just swapped sides.
Yeah.
He probably won't.
Well,
Leave.
Saive's no longer an option now, right? He's gone to Saint-Etienne.
Yeah.
Keep the Newcastle loan train going.
They are running out of options swiftly, and I just want to mention a team that I have a little bit of a fear about at the moment, and that's Lorient. I mean, they started very well in the game against Caen a week ago, but 3 red cards in 2 games is utterly mind-blowing. I mean, if I was the manager, I would be tearing my hair out, kicking bottles everywhere. Players wouldn't be able to touch each other for the next week because I'd be too fearful that someone might get themselves sent off again. It's frankly bizarre that you get that many players sent off in 2 games, and with suspensions and players, especially someone like Didier Ndong, that's so important to them in that central area. I worry about them. I can see them scoring goals, but they're clearly not disciplined enough to defend or stay off too vigorous of a challenge, and it was poor this week as well to lose so poorly against against Bastia, who were impressive, but they're the teams in Liga, those ones around you need to beat to stave off relegation, and unfortunately I worry for them a little bit. I do want to mention another team, Eric. I hope you can mention this with me. The ones that impressed me is Guingamp. How have you seen them over the first 2 weeks of the season?
Oh yeah, they've been fantastic. I think that playing this sort of 4-4-2 with Salibur and Coco wide. Again, Comboy is giving a chance to these younger players. Diallo and Doe look very solid. I mean, Doe I think was really one of the unsung heroes during his time at Nantes. Privat and Briand look up to their old tricks. Energy, movement, pace, ability on the ball. Sorbonne and Kerbrat look solid as well. I would say Janssen looks an upgrade on Loso in goal. So yeah, I mean, in the previous show, this may come back to haunt me. Haha. I had picked Guingamp to be a possible outside shot for Europe. I gotta say, I think I want to continue to stick by that. They've got the dynamism in midfield. They've got younger players who can be a bit of a wild card. Their next 2 matches are at Nancy and home versus Montpellier. We could see this team have 10 points after 4 matches, and then maybe we start to take them a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, and I've really been impressed by the development of Marcus Coco, who was good last season, but he seems to be finally hitting that stride that we maybe expected of him, and he's becoming a really exciting player. But that's all we have time for this week. It's been a jam-packed show. My thanks to Eric, Philip, and Peter, and to all of you listening at home this evening. Join us on Thursday for the preview show hosted by Mr. Devin himself, and remember to tune in the same time next week. A bientôt and goodbye.